All right, Micayla Delesparra, thank you so much for joining us today in the Sports Capstone class. We usually start these off just by having you give us maybe a rundown of your career, even before you got to where you are, right? So, taking a look at your undergrad, I know you were at Florida State, and you came to UF for your master's, and then you've done a lot of different things that kind of have led up to your current role with the Miami Heat. So, kind of walk us through that, if you don't mind.
Of course. So I graduated in 2017 from Florida State. I was in their communications program and digital media studies. They don't really have a journalism school quite like UF does. So I knew that I kind of wanted to go into the sports journalism field, but I wasn't sure where. So I worked for their athletic team while I was there for a few years, and I did some video editing and sideline reporting for them. And then I decided to get my master's at UF, and I did the mass communications master's program there. It was a year program. You can either, I think you can make it into 2 years, but I ended up just staying through the summer and doing a year and doing some internships with WUFT and ESPN Radio, where I was the sports reporter on air there, as well as writing the articles. When I graduated in 2018, I then got my first job in New York City working for a company that used to be owned by Fox Sports. It's called Home Team Sports. It was more of an advertising slash marketing agency where you worked with all different regional networks in sports, and you had to create strategies for the individual brands to create commercials. So I was helping, for example, one of our biggest partners was I'm trying to think. We had a lot of uh like housing companies. We had a lot of different products and beauty, and everyone was trying to break into it. So we had to create what type of sports verticals were great for them. So I helped in ideating basically. I was an account specialist there for a few years, and I would help strategize on what the commercial should be and kind of what avenues and what regions it should air on, because we were a regional sports network. So you could pick whether it just aired in Florida or it aired nationwide. That was really fun to work on. However, COVID hit and I wanted to move back home where I'm from to Florida. So I got a job with CBS Sports, and I was working with them as a production assistant, which is more of what I wanted to go into originally. It's just, of course, a lot harder to get into the reporting and production side of things right out of school. So just to be able to get any internships or experience, I was grateful for Fox Sports giving me that opportunity. But I knew I ideally wanted to be in production of some sort. So I went to CBS, and there I worked in live TV, which was a lot different than working in post production, which I was more used to. And I was working in their control room, kind of editing the highlight videos and working with the talent to get them on air. And then that was a brief stint because my dream was always to work for the Miami Heat. And when I saw a position opened, I actually applied 3 times prior to getting my role. And it just took continuing to apply, watching on LinkedIn, reaching out to people. And finally, I was able to secure a role with the Heat and get my foot in the door as a production assistant. And since then, I've been here. This is my fifth season I'm going into, and I've kind of worked my way up to be a producer, and I've started to lead a lot of our TV shows and a lot of our edits. I specifically work on the long form content team here at the Heat. So I am a producer for their Inside the Heat show, which airs on now FanDuel, and then after it's 2 weeks on FanDuel, it goes on YouTube. And we're now starting to lean into YouTube heavily and creating strategies and content for that.
Okay, awesome. So tell us a little bit more about your role specifically with the Heat right now and what your day looks like. I know maybe in season is a little different than from out of season possibly. And what goes into the role of being a producer, especially on the long form side, working for a team like the Heat?
So a lot goes into your day to day. Of course, when it's the off season, there's not much going on with the players in the arena. However, there's a lot of back end preparation that happens for the season. We have 11 shows a year that we do that air on television. So we take the summer to really hone in on strategizing what players, coaches, people in general we want to focus on throughout the season. That way we can kind of get everything approved, because in order to do these shows, we have a team called Sports Media Relations, and they are the direct reports with the players. So they have to approve everything, they have to get the players to approve it. So we kind of spend the summer capturing what we want to do, and we kind of give it to the media relations team. That way, when the season comes, we can follow along with the players after they've already approved it. And we also worked to kind of log everything because we get a lot of footage during the season, and we have interns that help us kind of log everything so it's easy to find when we're doing shows. However, we of course can't do every single game and community event as the season's going because it gets so busy. So we'll spend a lot of the off season kind of organizing and filing things away. We also attend a lot of events that the players and the staff do over the summer. That way, if we do a show, for example, Bam does a foundation event where he plays basketball and he reads books to a lot of kids over the summer. And we use that footage if we later on do a show on him in the season. So it's kind of seeing if you can get as many things ahead of the season before all the craziness begins. Like we knew this year that it was our anniversary for the 2006 season and Olympic team. So we wanted to see if we could sit down with some of the past players. And we've spent this off season actually recording what some of our shows and podcasts are going to be. That way we didn't have to worry about getting these players that even though they may not play anymore, they still have active seasons. For example, Wade is a reporter now, so it's very hard to get him during the season or when he visits. So we just did a sit down interview actually Tuesday at a hotel here with him, Udonis, and Jason Jackson, our on air reporter. And we plan to put that together along with episodes with Shaq and Gary Payton. But during the season, it's more about following along with what is going on with each player. If we've done a show previously on them about their upbringing, maybe this time we're focusing more on basketball or where they're from or what they're doing in the community, or if they break a record, for example, all-star. There's all different things that go into that thought process, but we try to make each one individualized. And our main goal is to humanize the players because everyone can see what they're doing in basketball. But as a producer, we want it to feel like you're watching something that intrigues you and you can't learn this if you're just watching a basketball game. So our goal is to really get that all access field for all of our content. And it takes a team. We have a lot of shooters here. We have about 5 shooters and I'd say about 10 editors. But for my team specifically, there's only about 3 editors that edit the shows specifically. Everyone else does digital media, such as TikTok, Instagram, and all content in that aspect. And then we also have a team that does only in arena content. So there's 3 different teams within our team, and then there's a separate team for broadcasting, which is everything that's live content and produced in the moment during the games.
So you're talking about the interview that you did recently. What specifically is like your role in that process? Are you like working through like scheduling and making sure that everybody's there? What exactly is your role as a producer when setting up a shoot like that?
So we take turns. There's 3 main producers on my team, and every other show we switch. So this past one I was in charge of, and I basically have to work with sports media relations to tell them our idea, tell them the questions I'm going to be asking the player and whoever may be in the actual show. And then he reaches out to the player and gets the okay. And I give them a select amount of dates that our crew and our other personnel that may be hosting it are available. And we kind of work together to get it scheduled. And then their person, their agent, or whoever they work with, their manager, they're kind of the contact person that I go between, and we set up a date. And they never normally they don't ask for the questions ahead of time. They just want to know the general idea and where it's going to be aired or what the reasoning is for the show. And then once you get there, they typically it'll just be the player and their agent, and the agent kind of sits back and just makes sure that you don't ask any questions that are obviously not appropriate or they don't want discussed at the moment. And I come up with the questions myself and then I get them approved by my manager. And then I kind of set up a meeting, I'd say the week of, to discuss with the shooters and the shooters managers how we're going to go about it, how many cameras, the different angles we want. And we do a site visit if it's at a hotel like we just did. But if it's somewhere within the arena, we usually just like pop on by and we'll look at the space and kind of say, like, oh, we need these lights, or you kind of have to move things around and make it seem like you're on a set with a lot of the areas within the arena. But we have a studio down by our offices that we typically try to use the most because we can create a whole set there and you wouldn't even know that it's in the same place. So I work with our set designer and if he has to order things, he will for that. Or if he has an idea in mind, we'll discuss it and go back and forth and kind of see what works best, because there's times where we only had a day notice of a shoot this week because the date was supposed to be a month from now, and I kind of had to turn everything around, switch the location. Um, they were talking too much in the interview, so I had to drop questions off of what I wrote because I had too many written down. Things like that you kind of have to do as a producer while you're on set because you're given 35 minutes usually, and that's it. And you have to have a timer and everything because if you go over, they get very frustrated, the agents and the people that work with us as well, the media relations staff. So we try to be as precise and on top of things as we can be. And then once the show wraps up, I have to assign, we have 4 segments per show, and I have to assign, if I'm the head producer, what segment each person on my team will be getting to edit. And they'll have 2 to 3 weeks to edit that segment of the show. And then we'll all review it together and we'll have our head manager review it before it gets sent off to FanDuel.
That's some great insight into your role. So tell us, so obviously there's some technical skills that you need to be able to thrive in a role like this. But what are some of the like softer skills that maybe you didn't realize, like, coming out of college or your master's program, or that you've developed over time that have really worked well for you? And because it seems like you have to build a lot of relationships and communicate with a lot of different people. What are some of those soft skills that have benefited you the most?
To be honest, I thought it was going to be a lot of editing skills that I needed, but it is the softer skills that help a lot. It helps with maintaining connections for sure. I wouldn't have gotten the job if I didn't keep trying and I wasn't persistent. You may get denied your first few jobs. It may take months out of college to go and find the position that you really want, but I just kept communicating. I think that was my biggest thing. I would message people that I knew. I used LinkedIn as my biggest tool. Then once I got the role, I found that communicating was even bigger because if you don't communicate with the different teams on what you need, everything can fall through or they can forget something. And kind of being detail oriented is also extremely important because in this industry, if you miss out on one detail, it could ruin the whole show. And then you could say, oh, but you forgot to take this person out or you forgot to add this name. And you could have to redo everything, but it already aired on national television. So staying atop of those details and the high communication is extremely important, as well as I find that teamwork is important because if you're not working together, then you're gonna kind of suffer alone because sometimes it can be a lot and it can be stressful and it's such a fast-paced environment. You have to be able to thrive in that. We have times where we have 3 weeks to turn things around, or we have times where we have 10 hours and they may ask you to do something later in the day and you really don't want to do it. But you kind of just have to understand that if you don't push forward and take those opportunities and think of them as opportunities rather than, oh, I have to do this work. It's going to be so late. I want to go home, or it's late after a game and someone asks you to help them. You really just have to be there for your team and show them the hard work and dedication that you're willing to give in order to continue to grow within the industry.
Great. Any questions from the students? I've got a few more, but I want to give them the opportunity to ask questions. Nick.
Hey Michaela, I'm Nick. I interned with broadcasting. You might have seen me in the off season around the office.
Oh, hi.
I just wanted to ask, what kind of drew you to kind of pre-edited content instead of live production?
So to be honest, I didn't love live production after being in it for like 6 months with CBS Sports. It took a lot of mental capacity to be able to deal with those breaking news headlines. And you may be leaving at 6 o'clock and news breaks and you have to run down and you don't know how long you're going to be in that studio and what they're going to need from you. And it was just more high paced than I was used to. I would say that working here at the Heat with the pre-edited, it's still high pace and they have tight deadlines and you have to get your work done. But I find that there's a lot more leniency in the editing and the time you have. And I feel like there's more time to get your craft and be creative and really get to build a story better. Whereas when it's breaking news and it's live, yes, you could throw up highlights and you could do great reporting on it. But I really enjoyed the side of the storytelling and getting to take that time to really humanize these players with just pre and post editing and not live.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, Jordan.
Hey, so I am really interested in video editing. What are some of we talked about the soft skills. What are some of the more technical proficiencies that you think are most useful when applying for video editing jobs?
Well, number one is the Adobe Suite. That is like the same software everyone seems to use around. I mean, we used to use Avid here, had never heard of it before I applied, or Interplay, I think they call it. I'm not sure. But I pretended like I knew what it was and I applied and I had to teach myself leading up to the job. But now it's everything is Premiere Pro, After Effects, and Photoshop. But Premiere Pro is really the biggest software that we use, as well as Envato. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. There's some other sites similar to that, but we use that a lot here at the Heat because we like to use it for sound effects and video effects and templates and things of that nature, as well as being able to just adapt easily. If you can learn quickly and you're willing to, you will be able to do any of the technical skills they ask. But I would say that effects are huge nowadays. I'm not the best when it comes to that. I've always been on the form team, which is more focused on just the natural, authentic storytelling. But within video editing for digital here and for our in-game arena, it's all with effects.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? So you obviously probably are, working the process of hiring, either new hires and interns and those sort of things. What kind of things are you looking for during the hiring process and interview process that really stand out? We have lots of students that are obviously interested in working for the Miami Heat, but also just kind of getting in to the NBA or NFL or Major League Baseball or something similar. So what are some of those skills and what are some of those things that stand out through that process?
So something that I notice is a lot of people nowadays have internships and experience, but it's really about what you're doing at those experiences and your reels that matter the most to show what you're capable of. Also, when we interview you, we want to know what your skills are and why you think you would be a good asset to the team. I find that we've honestly been doing a lot of interviews because we had some people leave recently that had just been here a long time, were moving back to family, or just were ready to move on to their next adventures. So we've been looking for some employees. We do interns every season, and that's the main thing we've been looking for is that they're able to talk to us about not just what they can do technically, but how they can fit in best and what they can add to our team, whether it's their what they're willing to do, what they're willing to learn, what they know already. Also that they're detail oriented, of course, great communication skills. They don't hesitate when they're having an interview and not know how to answer, but they can come up with something right on the spot. I know that was a big thing when I applied. I was asked a lot of not personal questions, but more of, oh, and what makes you a good editor? Or just things that didn't relate specifically to what I was applying for, but to the workplace in general.
Great. So obviously you went to Florida State, you graduated from UF in the master's program, and you've had a lot of good work experience that has led up to the role that you're in. But what is something when you finished with your academic career and you got into the real world, what's something that maybe surprised you about being in the professional world, or you're like, man, I wish I knew about this when I was going into the professional world?
I would say the work-life balance, not realizing how much energy it takes from your day to day and what you have to put into it. And I didn't realize also how much it took to be able to get these jobs. It took a lot of time and persistency and really showing and proving how hardworking you are. Because if you don't prove it and you don't give it your all, even if you may not agree with some things or you're just exhausted and you don't want to keep fighting it, you really can fall back and not get the next opportunity. I've seen it happen more than once within the industry, and it's a very fast pace. I know I've said that on this call already, but it's extremely fast paced, and you have to be able to keep up with that and be willing to give up your time in the beginning because it'll pay off down the road for sure.
What's great about working for the Miami Heat or working in the NBA, and what are some challenges?
So one, they value you like crazy. They appreciate all your work that you do, and they show it. I absolutely love working here. It feels like a family, this organization. And the two companies I was at before, they were great as well. This just feels more like a family. I don't know if it's because it's a specific team and not just an overarching company, but since the day I stepped foot in here, everyone was so welcoming and willing to teach me. I ask a million questions, and I feel like at times it can be annoying to some, but they never hesitate to show me how to do something. I love to learn new softwares that we get and effects and things like that. So I feel like it's been great because they welcomed me with open arms, but they were also very, very helpful in explaining and guiding me when I needed it. What was the other question?
What are the challenges?
The challenges are definitely the deadlines and the quick turnarounds because it changes a lot within this industry. The CMO may say they want something done Friday, and then they're like, actually, can we get it done by end of day? And you just have to say yes, stay and make sure to get it done because that's the way of the sports world and things change immediately. We just got some news, I'm sure a lot of you have heard, and we had to make some immediate changes this morning when we stepped into the office, and you have to act quickly on these changes if you have to remove someone's sound or if you have to remove an image from the website or things of that nature. You must be on top of your game and you must stay very organized and communicate well in order for that to take effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So last question here. A lot of the students here are either graduating in December or will be in April. What's one piece of advice, whether it's, the application process, the interviewing, networking, whatever it may be, what's some advice that you would like to hand down to the students?
Definitely be persistent and don't give up. It took me several months post college to get a job. I didn't want to just settle for any job. I wanted something I would be interested in and that I had somewhat of experience in. Apply everywhere you possibly can. Half of them you may not hear back, but when you apply, use LinkedIn as your friend. Reach out to people you don't know, message them. If you ever need a connection or anything, if anyone's ever interested in working here, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn, message me. I will try to help the best way I can. Or if you ever need advice or anything, I always love to help other students. I've had people reach out to me and I at least can get your resume seen or an interview. But use your resources and use the school resources for sure and stay in touch. I've found that since leaving other jobs, I made sure I always left on a very good note. That way I could stay in touch and keep that connection because you never know where it'll take you down the road and you may need to reach back out to them. So definitely continue to be persistent. Don't give up when applying and you'll get a job that you love.
All right, Micayla, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. It was great to see you.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure. Good luck, guys, and congrats on graduating.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.